Okay. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, May 8th. We're having our briefing meeting. We're beginning at 2:05.
Respond.
Just take a minute to review the agenda with me. Please note that there are no oral reports today for our committees. However, since you've had the reports and we're able to review them, later when we come back to this, if you'll just let me know there are certain ones that you would like to address and discuss, we will do so. Then next, we will be hearing from Mr. Blurton and Mr. Parfit related to the beginning of our budget briefings and also, most importantly, our SRO budgeting. Under operations, Mark Mora and Scott Rickenbacker are going to be giving us an update on major capital, and then we will follow up with public comment, board member comments, and so on. Is there anything for good of the order for the briefing meeting? Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, as you reviewed different committee reports, I'll just go down each one and I'll ask if there are any components of those committees that you would like to discuss. District Advisory Council, the Construction Advisory Committee. Yes, Ms. Morgan.
Well, I thought it was an awesome report. First of all, they are obviously doing an awful lot. I thought that what was really interesting is that they're talking about examining a charter district pilot, what SREF items can be deemed unnecessary and will not be required for new schools. They're going to put together a list of what can be omitted and cost estimates, and going to share that at the next month's committee meeting. So I'm just pleased to say that in addition to doing their usual work,
they're proactive.
They're being proactive now.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I appreciated that.
Anyone else with regard to that? Ms. Patrica.
Yeah, and I posed this question to Dr. Adkins before today's meeting, and Mark Moore did give me a good explanation as to why we're opening MMM with all 4 grades at once, because that was part of that report. And I have concerns about heading in that direction. I just spent a weekend in Miami with the FHSAA, and many of those people work in schools, and I was talking to 2 guys who opened a school, all 4 grades at once, and the disaster that it was for them. 2 different schools in Orange County, and it was a disaster. So I understand why we're considering doing it, but I want us to be very, very cautious and consider all of the negatives and weigh and balance before we make the final decision.
Now, my conversation with him was that we would be opening a freshman class in portables during the 2021 school year, and then in the 21-22 school year is when you would have the expansion to the other grade levels. So you still have at least a 2-year phase in, and again, we could. I appreciate the input. I mean, one of the things that we could also consider doing if you're opening up a portable campus anyway is what grade levels do you want to consider when you're opening up that type of campus. But I did want to be clear, it wasn't 4 at once in 1 year, that there was going to be a freshman class and then would move into the full building.
Thank you.
Okay. Continuous systemic improvement. Any comments or questions?
No.
Curriculum advisory.
Yeah, I just want to say, wouldn't it be great if we could use Blackboard online collaboration to attend board meetings? Mr. Attorney Martin, wouldn't that be great?
You need some legislation.
Or maybe just like looking at policies of other districts and how they use modern technology in attendance of our meetings. Okay, I'll go the legislative route if that's what you're telling me I have to do, but I think this needs to be addressed. I think it's ridiculous that in the year 2018 we're expecting our students to be up to date technologically, and we are not with regard to our own policies. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Chris.
I agree. There should be some way that we can put some components into place. Maybe that's something we could get collaboration with our county commissioners on. to see if they are interested in that, and maybe it could be a two-sided
Wouldn't that be
pitch.
nice?
Equity and Diversity Committee, any comments or questions regarding that report? Yes, Ms. Patrica.
So the discussion about social workers I thought was a good one, but it brings to mind for me a difference, and I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. So they want to know what is our ratio of social workers to students, and I'd like it if we could perhaps remove charter schools from that calculation, because it's my understanding that charter schools are not required to hire social workers and counselors in the same way that traditional public schools are. So this came about as the result of a conversation I had with Lori Brooks. She explained to me that charter schools will come to her or come to the district and say, you know, we have a student with a mental health issue, but they haven't used their FEFP dollars to hire a counselor. We don't have the resources because we've given those resources to the charter school, but at the same time, we're not going to say, no, we're not going to help one of our own students. So that further stretches the limited resources that we have. So I just want to make sure that when EDAC does that evaluation in determining the correct number of social workers in our schools, that we're actually comparing in schools that have social workers and not just including all of the schools in that calculation. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something.
And then the last thing was, never mind. Never mind, I'm done.
I think that's something with your comment you just made. I think we need that calculation whenever we get numbers to help us think. We need to work around based on those aspects that we control, not the charter schools. Finance Advisory, any comments or questions regarding their report? Okay, then we will move on. Mr. Blurton, are you ready? You ready to get ready? That was a... It goes by quickly when they don't give their reports at the end of the year, doesn't it? Their oral reports.
I like the written reports.
Oh, I do too.
I think it's a lot of content out of reading the reports, so I thought that was terrific.
I believe that, and we get the written reports all the time.
Yeah, but these felt more detailed.
Either that or the secretaries are being more, I don't know.
There's something, there was a lot more
There's just
a lot more detail this
information,
this time. And that's true. It may have been an update more with regard to maybe
Maybe changing staff at some of the.
change in staff, and also as they were looking, there wasn't that much, so they included more details from minutes aspect that were.
As Mr. Blurton gets ready with his presentation, Kelly and Rick, just want to talk a little bit about where we are right now in the budget process. They've done their school allocations that we're still working on tweaking as we speak. The department budgets are in, and again, we are working on that as well. We met actually this morning as chiefs to go through some of the initial numbers. Overall, as he will share with you, and as you are probably already aware, it is not a budgetary windfall, to say the least. And in addition to that, we have some challenges, as you are also aware, and that's why Mr. Parfit is here today. So this is a complex process. I think one win that we do have to mention is that we, thanks to Mr. Davis and the chiefs and a lot of people in Kelly's department, went to work, and we've got an electronic tool that is really has brought us kind of kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Okay. So I'm happy to and excited about moving forward what that's going to bring to the process, because it'll allow us to be able to start working on this budget. I think October is what your plan is, Mr. Floyd, is that correct?
To start earlier, just to really start having those conversations, the department directors to really start looking at their budgets in preparation, so it's not, you know, just a time crunch that we have had in the past. Be more proactive in the process, absolutely.
So, it gives us an opportunity to have more time, and also it will give us an opportunity to look at forecasted budgets moving forward, so they will understand really what they have to work with well in advance, which gives us more time to make, I think, careful considerations. Moving to a point where we're really working on budget this process. So, having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Blurton if you're ready.
Right. As Kelly likes to say, it's budget day every day. So yes, and thank you, Dr. Atkins, and good afternoon, board members and Mr. Martin. So Kelly and I will do the first part, just giving you a brief update on the budget, where we are. Dr. Atkins kind of set it up nicely for us, and Kelly has some of the specific numbers that I briefly briefed to each of you in one-on-ones last week. So we'll give you just a little bit more of the detail, and just reiterate the timeline as we go forward. And then we'll move from the budget update into the school resource officer update, and Mr. Parfit and I will provide that for you too. Sound good? So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Kelly. You have in your backup materials the state allocations that we've gotten, and again, I went over this briefly with each of you individually last week, and so she's here to provide more of the detail, and we're obviously any questions that you have.
So most of you have looked at this, and while it looks like a lot when you're in the public and you hear $17.6 million, it probably sounds like a lot of money, but when you run a school district, it's really not that much money when you look at everything that we have to do. I just want to kind of break it down for you and for the public, so we all know that's about, they gave us 47 cents more per student. Not a whole lot you can do with it, cost of a postage stamp, what are you going to do with that really when you're looking at the things that we need to do and really moving our students forward and providing resources to them. And when you break that down even further and you look at the way it breaks out by the money they really gave us, so of that $17 million, $7 million of that goes directly for the growth. So that is new students drive $7 million of that. So that leaves $10 million that we really get over and above. When you look at that, about $4 million of that is for price level. So that means that the cost of everything's going up. So that's, the price level accounts for that. When you go even further down, $7 million of that is tied up into what we used to call categoricals, and the state likes to take that title away and not call them categoricals, but basically that is the funds were given to us for specific purposes, so we don't have the luxury of using those dollars for things that we would like. They're driven for things that the state wants us to do. And then when you keep breaking it down, that doesn't leave much to do what we really need to do. When you look at that 17 million, and I think you all have had these numbers given to you before, but of that we have the retirement increase that is about $3 million in the retirement increase that we're mandated to do that. We don't have a choice, we have to do that. Our insurance costs have gone up about $1.3 million. On top of that, we had done some increases before with insurance, and the self-insurance fund was covering that. That's coming into the general fund this year. That's about another $5 million that the general fund is picking up. We have some other things that have hit. The SROs, one per every school, has driven some cost into ours. For us, it's going to be an additional $2 million, not including charter schools, just our traditional schools based on our estimates. It's another $2 million. And then the mental health requirement that came in is another $2.1 million that the state has given us for that to work on. But that's funds that we, again, can't use somewhere else. That's for that specific purpose. When you break all of that down, there's not a lot of money. We still have the requirement of the auditor that we have to do. So we have to fund the internal auditor that the state has mandated us to do. And so we're in a very tight position, and that doesn't include the things that we really would like to do to move ourselves forward.
And essentially, it's at a, even before we bring in the department budgets and look at the schools and the additional support that they're requesting, when we start looking at all those, I mean, we're already at least a break even, at the most a break even from what we're getting over last year, 47 cents per student. So when you start folding in just the growth that we do have, and to meet that growth from how we operate in the schools to here in this office, it's going to be another challenge for us again this year. So that's where we are today, and as we continue forward in our next briefing, we will have the chiefs will have gone through the department budgets and looking at what those requests are in the schools and coming to a balanced budget, and we'll come forward with that information for you at our next briefing.
So just some context that I want to provide for a portion of what Kelly has provided you in terms of information relative to our budget. If you look at, for example, the cost of insurance, that is something that continues to outpace inflation. It's even, outpaces practically everything with the exception of college tuition in terms of our economy, as the cost of health care. Anywhere from 7 to 9% every single year. We are still, as a district, below what is typical in the state of Florida for comparable school districts in the amount that we provide our employees despite the increases. Typical, last time we looked, was $7,500 per employee. We're at about $7,000 employee. So I think the school district gets a lot of bang for its buck in terms of what we provide insurance, but because of the rising cost of health care, this is something that the team had to take on this year. She mentioned the insurance is fixed. That's something from the state that we are required to do. I think she also mentioned that our infrastructure insurance costs, those costs also went up as well. And so at the end of the day, you don't have a lot to spread around. Mr. Parfit, I won't rain on his parade, but he will talk to you a little bit more about the required mandate of our school resource officers. And, we have to have a safety officer in those buildings. And, of course, there was additional funding of about $2.9 million for that. However, the overall cost, as was mentioned, was $8 million. And so we are working really, really hard to try to work with our different municipalities to cover that difference. And again, what's again continues to be frustrating, as I mentioned before, was that 2008 Safe Schools Categorical, which is where we get our dollars for resource officers, was over $2 million a decade ago. Okay, so 2008, a decade ago, Safe Schools Categoricals was a little over $2 million. Fast forward to this year, as you can see right there on the slide, or right there in the document that's in the backup material, $1.6 million. We have 22,000 more students today than we did back in 2008. So now we're going to add an additional $2.9 million. That's great. However, we need to, I think, acknowledge that these are dollars that we really should have had well before this year. So there you have it. It's not a windfall, as some would paint it to be. And as we look forward in the next upcoming years, the state of Florida has some concerns that it has to overcome, and that expenditures have outpaced revenue at this point. So there's going to probably be some reductions. So we have to have a very candid conversation, continue to have that with chiefs in our chiefs meeting, so that we can tighten our belt even more and really direct our resources to funding this strategic plan. And that's what drives these conversations. That's what we talked about this morning. Does this request, is it aligned with our strategic plan? We were talking specifically about a couple academic concerns this morning. ESE, you've heard come up again. And also reading is another area that came up again. These are areas that are directly aligned. So we are looking, when we're making those decisions, that those are looking like some areas that we may do some increases in funding, but we're going to have to do some reductions in other places to make that all work.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. Any questions before we move to the school resource officer update?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right. So we last briefed you on the school resource officer program and the update with the new legislation coming down on March 27th. So this is a briefing just on what has transpired since that last briefing. I'll take the first part of it, and then which is more specifically what's happened since then, and just talking a little bit more from a funding perspective. And then Mr. Parfit will take it. We also looked at other school districts and what they are doing, what they have been doing, and what they are doing currently to meet this mandate as well. So at its April 3rd board assumptions workshop regarding school safety legislation, the Board of County Commissioners had decided that they would continue their cost share of funding 50% of school resource officers for the Lee County School District, but only within unincorporated Lee County. And so what that basically means is 39 of our schools, K through 12, so our elementary schools, our K through 8s, and our middle and high schools. So what about the other half of our schools? And as I'm talking about this is Lee County School District schools, our traditional schools, and did not include charter schools or some of our special centers at this time, the tech centers. So just keeping it what we have been covering currently. So schools that are located in other municipal jurisdictions, basically, we would have to look to the other municipalities such as the city of Fort Myers, the city of Cape Coral, Village of Estero, city of Bonita Springs, town of Fort Myers Beach, and the city of Sanibel for those services. City of Sanibel has been covered, and that is still going forward. City of Sanibel Police Department working with us in the partnership for the Sanibel School. So as it is right now, Lee County School District has 17 of our schools in the city of Cape Coral, 14 within the city of Fort Myers. We have 4 in the city of Bonita Springs, 2 in the village of Estero, and 1 at the town of Fort Myers. So all told, if we were to, and we worked just on the data that we have right now is what our current very successful partnership has been with the Lee County Sheriff's Office. And if we just take those numbers and we put a school resource officer in every school, it's over $8 million to do that. And when you fold in our safe school funding that we do get from the state, and you take out what we have to give to the charter schools, and then some of our internal alternative suspension programs, we have just a little bit over $3.8 million left for this, leaving almost $4.5 million to cover. And that's where we look to our partners in the municipalities that we have had in the great partnership with the Sheriff's Office to help fill that gap. So since that time, and we understood from the county commissions, we've had ongoing discussions with Sheriff Mike Scott of what is or isn't possible, and how do we as a school district go forward. We've had a very productive meeting last week with the city of Cape Coral, with their police department chief Newland and their city manager, Mr. Serzlag, and we also have meetings set up next week with the city of Fort Myers, the city manager, Mr. Kazemi, and Chief Diggs, while we are continuing our discussion with Sheriff Mike Scott regarding the program that we have, how we continue with them going forward, and then also working with the Village of Estero, City of Bonita Springs, and Town of Fort Myers Beach, because currently sheriff's deputies cover those municipalities. So that's where we are, over $8 million to have an SRO in every school. The discussions that we're having with the other municipalities, specifically the City of Cape Coral and the City of Fort Myers, is if we can go forward with them, what does that cost structure look like, so that we can come back to you and really provide you where this is going. Part of the other data that is helpful is what are our neighbors doing? What are other school districts doing? So since our last briefing, and now with Mr. Parfit on board, really going out and looking at other districts, and they have the same challenge. Some have done it exactly the same way that we have done it. Others have done it a little bit differently, but all told, now with this new mandate, there is a huge gap that needs to be filled, and some are having a lot of challenges, but everyone is in the same boat at the very least. So I will turn it over to Mr. Parfit to give you an idea of what other school districts are doing.
Good afternoon. Looking at the information you may have, there are about 10 school districts in the state that have listed as law enforcement with their school district. Of those, it's kind of misleading. Of those, most of them are limited. They do special investigations, or they may actually supervise or administer the SRO agreements. There are only about 3 districts in the state that their school police actually run their SRO program. So some of these counties may have school police technically, but that may be on paper only. Starting with this, Hillsborough splits their school district between the sheriff's office and Tampa PD, and there's a 50-50 split there. Flagler County has an MOU with the Flagler County Sheriffs for high school and middle schools, and the district pays 29%. The sheriff's office is looking at or proposing a 50-50 split there. There's some negotiation that the district would prefer a 60-40, some type of negotiation. A lot of these districts are in this, as Mr. Blurton said, they're in the same situation. Polk County, MOUs with police departments and sheriff's office. They're actually looking at the Guardian program for a balance. Pinellas County has their own police department, law enforcement, but again, they're limited. They have an MOU with agencies for additional coverage. They're actually advertising right now on their website for school resource officers that they're apparently going to hire independently. And right now, they're also at odds with the City of Largo over additional funding. Broward County has MOUs with city police departments and the sheriff's office. Each city that has its own police department provides its own SROs. The sheriff's office covers the unincorporated or the areas, the cities that they patrol. For example, Deerfield Beach, Pompano Beach, those areas that they cover.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So are you saying, what's the county that you're talking about right now?
That was Broward.
So in Broward, the sheriff's department covers municipalities that are policed by the sheriff's department. Is that what you're saying? So
Yes.
that would be similar to Bonita Springs and Estero here.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And you say that those police forces are picking up the cost of that?
The cities that have police departments in Broward are paying that split.
But
50-50.
But the other ones, they already have an agreement.
Where the
Get it, wherever the sheriff's department is active, then the sheriff's department will be paying 50%.
provides those, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Cities are a whole load.
Yeah.
Broward also has several areas where they have retired officers in elementary schools. So it's a kind of an eclectic mix of what we have and what we're seeing. Pasco County has school resource officers in middle and high schools, a 50-50 split. They have armed security guards in their elementary schools. Sarasota County, ironically, currently has SROs in middle and high schools. They are planning on doing away with that, hiring 30 armed security guards now and 26 armed security guards next year. Manatee County has school resource officers in middle and high school with the sheriff in several cities. They also have a 50-50 split. Manatee's also looking at exploring the possibility of making the SROs an overtime kind of a detail where it's listed as $35 per hour. I think looking at that from a logistical standpoint, that could mean that we would have, they would have a different officer in their school every day. Yeah. Collier County provides SROs for all the schools in the school district at no cost to the school district. They, from information this morning, they will continue to do that. It's my understanding that the Safe School money goes to the sheriff, but the sheriff's office takes the loss on that. Leon County also has a 50-50 split. They're in some negotiations with Tallahassee PD and some others. And that's it.
So we hope that just gave you a little brief update since March 27th. What's transpired since is still absolutely a work in progress. Looking to our community partners of how we can meet this challenge together. Like I said, we've had a productive meeting so far with the sheriff, with the City of Cape Coral, meeting next week with City of Fort Myers, and on tap with the other municipalities just to come up with what the solutions would be, and looking what our neighbors are doing and other school districts to come up with ideas of how we are able to successfully have a school resource officer in every school. Ms. Patrica.
So what are we looking at for a split? If we, if nothing changes from the county's perspective, what would our split be?
So right now, with our with the current partnership that we have with the sheriff's office, our 50-50 split it's just a little over $50,000 each of us for a deputy in the schools, and our current situation before Parkland, our split overall for having an SRO in each middle and high school, and then 5 elementary schools essentially shared or had a deputy rotate through them. Our 50-50 split was about $2.4 million each. And now to have an SRO in every school, which the sheriff's office was wonderful in doing that, right after Parkland and getting all of our schools covered through the end of the school year. Again, to maintain that, and we're just using our current agreement that's in place, that's where that $8 million comes from. What we need to understand from each of the other municipalities, should we be able to have partnerships with them, what is the split with their municipality? Because as we're looking in other districts, each agency's police department, that number may be different. It may be lower. For instance, City, Sanibel, City of Cape Coral, City of Fort Myers, those fees may be a little different, or they may be exactly the same, or higher, just depending upon what the cost is. But that's part of when we come to the table. Here's what we have available to us, which I had said is about the $3.8 million. The $4.5 million is the delta. That's where that's where we really need a lot of help going forward.
I don't think that was my question. My question is, if we're able to negotiate with Cape Coral and Fort Myers, which are really the only 2 municipalities that have police departments, right? Let's
City of
take them
Sanibel
out of the mix. What the county is proposing, what would the split be if we're stuck with what the county proposes right now? What percentage will we have to pay? What percentage will the county be paying?
So we would be under the same agreement that we have right now with them for the 39 schools within unincorporated Lee. And so I'm just making sure I understand, if we just go forward with what the county is proposing and just the 39 schools, it would be close to what we have right now. It would actually be just a little less than what we have right now. The $2.4 million each, it would be just a little bit under that.
But that proposal from the county doesn't include Bonita and Fort Myers Beach. And
It does not. So what we understand from them is that the municipalities that have schools within their jurisdiction, they would need to provide the funding for the sheriff's deputies in those schools, or pay the sheriff's office to have their deputies there.
But from what Mr. Parfit just said, there doesn't seem to be a model for that anywhere else in the state, right? It seems that the information just provided.
Right. That's what other districts are doing in counties, right?
So may I make a couple comments? No?
Well, just to tag on to that, except I did hear Broward, and Broward, if they were already covering, which currently Lee County covers Estero, Bonita, Fort Myers Beach,
Yeah, that's
they're
my
taking
point.
care of it. That's the only one that they're still going to take care of. Too bad we can't negotiate with that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. So, Mr. Parfit, I want to say that it's really nice to hear from you directly. I've told you, on a handshake that you have my full confidence, and I just want to say publicly you have my full confidence. I'm really glad that you're here. I think you're doing really important work, keeping our kids and our schools safe, our staff, all that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you provide the information that you gave us orally today via email? It may have already been provided by email and I missed it, but that would be really helpful for me to have that.
Thank you.
What about National Association of Mental Illness training? Will our resource officers, our school resource officers, will they have that or some other kind of training for them to identify?
The statute requires, obviously, the SROs to have training, and it also is mandating a CIT, a crisis intervention training. So that's an additional component of training that would be added to that. Now, from the standpoint of training the school staff or others, speaking to some other folks in the district here on that, it's still not clear, but it looks like they've got a handle on providing a mental health awareness training and training in-house staff to provide that.
Okay, so I remember being at Pinewoods when I was a para at Pinewoods, and a student was having an incident, and he was autistic, and I didn't know that. But the resource officer, because he had this NAMI training, was able to identify behaviors that helped the officer understand he was autistic, so he approached that situation from a mental health perspective instead of from a safety perspective. So I don't know that crisis intervention will give our officers that kind of training. That's, I guess, what I'm looking for, to make sure officers will have that kind of training.
It actually does. The CIT training does provide that, yes.
Okay, and then my last comment is, I think that SROs, the role of SROs in our schools has changed significantly. And I don't think that Parkland was the event that changed their role in our schools, but I do think it's the event that brought awareness of their role in our schools to the forefront of people's minds. And SROs are not just about education. SROs are about community safety. It is the entire community that is kept safe by having SROs in schools. Good SROs develop relationships with kids. They can gather intelligence about potential crimes that will be occurring in the community, and they can stop those crimes from ever occurring. So a failure on the county commission's part to identify that and to step up and fund community safety is alarming to me as a resident of Lee County. I mean, I live in Estero. Estero can't afford SROs.
Exactly.
They cannot afford to pay for SROs in the two schools that are located in the village boundaries. So if the county commission isn't going to step up with that funding, it's really, really alarming to me. Those are my comments.
Anyone else? I think we're going to have a... I know that you're working on this constantly, trying to get it, but, you know, we may need to have a few more times where we have conversations and brainstorming. We have to think outside of the box, and I agree, we need to get our county commission, the county needs to buy in a little bit more.
Well, we are certainly, you know, working very hard to make that happen. I mean, this is a conversation that we continue to have with our, not only our county commissioners, but our sheriff, who is continues to do an extraordinary job of advocacy on our behalf. But also, I think it was very refreshing to see the attitude of the city of Cape Coral, you know, and their willingness to step forward. And you know, you're already aware that, you know, Chief Diggs has indicated a willingness to help. Now, there are challenges with that. I mean, one of the things that continues to be a bit of an obstacle for us is that, you know, you're working with multiple municipalities, with multiple councils and elected officials, and as they all work through their budget process with limited priorities. So, you know, but and the other piece is we were put on notice that this is a school district problem. We're helping, but it's your issue to deal with, and so that's what we are doing. I look at it a little bit differently. I think this is a community issue. It's going to have to be a community effort because it's the community's responsibility to keep its children safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to more information. Hopefully, it'll be even more blessed. All right, Mr. Mora and Mr. Rickenbacker, if you'll please give us the update on our major capital.
We lost the mouse. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Atkins.
Afternoon.
I'm here today to report in your board packages. You should have had the change order memo reporting for March of 2018 and April of 2018. If you have any questions, I can answer those for you.
Okay, I guess
Okay.
not.
All right, then I will move in on the update, project status update. You'll see that a lot of great things have been happening at Bonita Springs High. Several of you have been out there for visits. The grass is growing. We'd love for a little more rain to accelerate that process, but we're ordering every day. The bleachers are installed. Press boxes are all going in place. The interior of the primary building, the building A, we refer to it, is in the punch list phase and just about complete. We're waiting on water service from our partner BSU. We're hoping within the next 30 days we'll have that. We're shooting for a furniture delivery from Mr. Estes, the principal, hopefully on June 1st, a little much farther in advance than what we had originally anticipated. So again, we're working with our partner BSU to try to get the water turned on so we have fire protection and can protect those investments. The gym and cafeteria, the school colors inside the gym are up. We have what we call duck socks, which accentuate the colors, the green and blue that Mr. Estes has for his school. And the wood floor is in place and getting final sanded, and the logo should be going on shortly. The cafeteria has all of the interior equipment and cooking items installed, and we're finishing out and punch listing the main dining areas. The Black Box Theater is going black. The catwalk is in place. The finishes on the walls are all being completed, and we're getting ready to start now with the interior final finishes, all of the light bars and things of that, and the punch list is also going on in the theater building. Fieldhouse, the shell is up, the roof is on. We just loaded up our air conditioning equipment. All the interior trim is being placed, as well as the tile work. That continues to be being built and is on schedule, and the site irrigation is going on, fencing is going on, and I'll send you another drone aerial because things are starting to get paved and starting to shape up. The light is complete at the intersection of Imperial Parkway, and it's in a flashing mode. We anticipate activating that right after the July 4th holiday so that we don't affect traffic, but that's in the process of being accepted by DOT, and it's complete and what we call being burnt in. Dugouts are built. Sports lighting just got placed, all the big poles. They're huge. And they should be starting to test those out, getting wired them up and energizing those to make sure they're working. And the bleachers and the press box are all installed out there now. And I know that there are some partners we're bringing out for possible naming rights and support funding for the district. MMM High School, we have received one comment from the advertisement where we asked the ACOR, you have to advertise locally, just a minor concern about some potential flooding that had happened from the previous storm series of last year, so we'll address those. We're still waiting on our Army Corps representative to return from Puerto Rico. We believe that should be any day now, and we can begin that process. The construction manager, we are currently working on a contract with legal assistance, and that we should have the CMAR on board here shortly within the next week to 2 weeks. Lehigh Senior, we had our second design meeting at the school today with the principal. Our architect has already begun designing that, and similar to that, the construction manager as well. That contract, the final draft was out today. We're just cleaning it up for specific points, and we should have them under contract as well within the next week to 2 weeks. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Board members, Mary?
Yes. Thank you, Scott. Could you just talk briefly about the seating in the Black Box Theater, just to describe what that's going to be like?
Correct. The Black Box Theater is kind of a culmination of two concepts. Standard auditorium, it's bleacher seating, and they're padded bleachers, so it's not like the bleachers you would have in the gymnasium, so it's a little more comfortable. They fold back, and they allow for that space to be a multi-purpose space. So if there's rental possibilities or community events, they could hold wrestling matches in there or other things in that area. They push back against the wall, they fold out for the actual presentation, and the black box isn't a raised stage, it's an elevated platform, and everything is black.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
And there's 530 seats in there.
530?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anything? Thank you, Mr. Rickmacher. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
At this point, we'll now move to public comment. Mr. Martin, would you please provide your disclosure for public comment?
School Board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this briefing meeting's agenda. The subject of a comment is limited to the items on the agenda. The time allowed per speaker is 3 minutes.
Thank you. Is there anybody on the left side that would like to address the board? Is there anybody on the right side that would like to address the board? Seeing nobody, I'll now close public comment. And that, I believe, is the last we have on the agenda, so this meeting is adjourned. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We go next page. Thank you. We'll now go to board member comments. We'll start with you, Ms. Fisher.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief today. I had a call this morning from a parent who wanted to compliment her children's bus drivers. And we've been hearing a lot of complaints about transportation lately, but I wanted to repeat this because she said that the bus drivers greet the kids in the morning with a smile, and they really start their day off well, and they bring them home safely and happy, if not always on time. But she just wanted to compliment the job that they're doing and to mention what an important piece they are to the day, in the successful day of the children. And then I have another thing. There's a proclamation from Governor Rick Scott. Today is Children's Mental Health Awareness Day in Florida. Whereas addressing the complex mental health needs for children, youth, and families today is a fundamental key to the future of Florida, and whereas mental health is critical to the well-being of our families, schools, communities, and businesses, and whereas untreated mental health issues in children and youth can lead to lifelong challenges for the children, their families, and the community, and whereas stigma and fear of discrimination may keep those who might benefit from mental health services from seeking help, and whereas there is a need for comprehensive services and supports that are family-driven, youth-guided, and culturally and linguistically competent and community-based, and whereas it is appropriate that a day should be set apart each year to recognize the importance of our children's mental health and well-being and our responsibility to promote them, and whereas all citizens, agencies, and organizations interested in partnering for health and hope following trauma can unite to promote effective services, now therefore I, Rick Scott, Governor of the State of Florida, do hereby extend greetings and best wishes to all observing, and it's not today, it's May 10th, 2018, as Children's Mental Health Awareness Day in Florida. And I wanted to take an opportunity to share that in light of all of the recent discussion and the recent funding that has been forwarded to us to help with children's mental health. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Patrica.
No, thank you.
Mr. Toiber.
Thank you.
I'm just proud of everything that our staff is doing as I go out and about. I'm amazed from construction to theater to planning for next year and how you're going to make it work with such a tight budget. Everyone is working hard. They're little hamsters in their hamster wheels, and I just thank everyone for their hard work and effort. Nobody's punching in the clock. They're going beyond, above and beyond. Ms. Morgan?
Two things. The Business Issues Subcommittee of the Horizon Council has started meeting again, and they've identified 4 issues, 2 of which have to do with the school district. One is school choice, and the other one is building a exploring with the district what the business community can do to support our college and our career and tech academies. And Dr. Kriya will be presenting to them, I believe it's the 3rd week in May. And I hope that will be followed by a presentation to the Horizon Council.
Could you get a little clearer on when their points is school choice?
Actually, that's a real estate concern, and the issue is how do we better educate what it is that we're doing about school choice. Okay. So that will not, I've not made arrangements for that to be discussed at this current meeting, but at the next meeting, hoping that we will know maybe a little bit more, but that's what it's about. The other thing is that I met with one of the students. The students who met with Dr. Atkins and Dr. Creel formed two committees, one for a voter drive and another one for fundraising, well, not for fundraising necessarily, but to approach the state legislature about increasing funding for safety and security measures. So I met with the student who is the co-chair of the funding initiative, and they are very, very eager to get going with the campaign. They want to be able to meet individually with legislators. They want to mount a letter-writing campaign. They want to go up to the state. They are waiting for us to provide information about the SRO cost, well, basically the safety and security funding, how it's being allocated, where the holes are, and what's only being funded one time and what is being funded going forward. So they are waiting, she is waiting for us to get back to them, and Dr. Atkins and Dr. Creel are aware that they're waiting. So those are my comments.
Okay, Mr. Martin?
Yes. Board members, just since Ms. Patrica brought up the issue, if I could just give you a quick clarification as to the distinction between the distinction with respect to participation through technology at a school board meeting as opposed to a board advisory committee meeting. You have statute 101372, section 4, which says that no business may be transacted at any meeting, and that's referring to a school board meeting unless a quorum is present. The Attorney General, in the opinions, multiple opinions that he has provided on, that have been provided on this issue, has said that that means there must be a quorum physically present, and then if anyone is going to participate by phone or some other technology, there must be a quorum physically present, and they can only participate in extraordinary circumstances. With respect to board advisory committees, there is no statute that establishes the procedures under which they operate. The only authority is Lee County School Board policy. And Lee County School Board policy says that they can take action without a quorum. So that quorum requirement doesn't fit with board advisory committees as it does with school board meetings under this statute. And that's why my response was that you would need legislation.
So you have to have a quorum physically present in order for someone to participate via telephone or video conference or whatever. Is that what you're saying? Without extraordinary circumstances present?
Well, if someone is going to participate in a school board meeting through technology, then two conditions have to exist. There has to be a quorum physically present, and the individual participating has to have extraordinary circumstances. That's the opinion of the Attorney General. Okay. And the opinion is based upon this statute saying a quorum is required to be present. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins?
No comments right now.
Okay. Then at this point, this meeting is adjourned, and we will be meeting for our workshop in 5 minutes.
Right.